about home. They're married to real estate.
So, Mary, life is good. Spring is springing.
Yeah.
I know you're busy. Tell me what's going on in real estate.
Yeah, I have those couple of listings coming on. I've the other day I wrote 5 offers, none of which got accepted. So that's a little discouraging, but you know, we're doing it, and my buyers are active, so that's good. But other than that, you know, I'm dealing with my car still, which has been an ongoing
What's a realtor
saga.
without her car?
I know, it's really, really difficult. Although my sweet friend April did loan me her very beautiful vintage Volvo wagon for a couple of weeks, which was nice. But I thought I was through it and got my car back on Tuesday, but it's being towed as we speak. So,
So, Mary, for our readers' sake, co-broke. Co-broke is what?
That's the so the way that it works now is that when you sign a listing agreement, in the contract with the seller, they agree to pay you as the list agent a certain percentage, and they also agree to give some of that to offer that to the buyer agent, who is the co-broke in the transaction.
And that's been listed in the multiple listing service, but it will stop as of July.
Yep. Maybe sooner, but that's when the notice of the verdict is going to be, put out there, handed down, however that works legally. And then we'll go from there. But by then we should have some things hammered out. I think our documents will change, how it's worded. Things will change a little bit, but not really. You can still, as a seller, offer a co-broke. And, that's recommended, and
Keep it easy and smooth and clean.
Yeah, it goes with the transaction. It's built into the price, so yeah, there'll be some bad information, misinformation out there, which I think there is. The sky is falling. It's not. It's pretty much business as usual until, and it's just going to be a paperwork type of change, conversations, communication.
So we know over the years with every industry, we see ups and downs and transitions, and we all adjust, right? We all adjust to whatever the need is. Yep. Yes, great. Well, terrific. And
well, what about you, Mary?
Sorry about the five offers that went unaccepted.
Thank you.
It's a strange place. For me, I had a great week this week. I did a training in the Keller Williams office on how to build business by referral, regardless of the industry, regardless of whether you're a dentist or a realtor. And I had fun doing it. I hope it was of value to you.
It was very valuable. I loved it.
Good.
Thank you.
Excellent. And so I offer it to folks, especially around Westford and Chelmsford, if you want an hour of motivational speaking about how to build a business by the people that you know, let me know, and I'll be happy to do it for you in my retirement.
Great job, Mary.
Thanks. And to that end, I refer people to agents now. That's all I do. I don't sell houses. So I just have a new referral agent I'm working with in Somerville, and so a really great guy, and I'm looking forward to working with him too. But today, we are really lucky to have with us Ellen Harde, just a long-term resident of this beautiful town, Westford, Massachusetts. And Ellen, I'm going to start out by telling a story about you. I moved up here in 2017. I moved up off Depot on Cherry. I didn't know anybody. I moved into a beautiful town. I remember, and of course I'm a realtor, so I couldn't find a house up here, so my nephew bought a house for us on Cherry in Westford. And I didn't know, so I found myself down on the town center, the green, and there was this little shop, this new muffin shop. And I thought, oh, this is really ideal, but I don't know anybody. So I walk in there, I buy my muffin or scones, and sit down, and this really nice woman, Ellen Harde, comes over to me. And she welcomes me. And that's the first person who really welcomed me into Westford. And just across the street was a really beautiful antique home.
It is beautiful.
And that's Ellen's home. And there was a lovely woman paring down your St. Joseph, whatever, artichokes, whatever the artichoke trees were. And who is that? And she said, that's my landscaper. She helps me. I said, oh, I need one of those. And that started another relationship. So I said to Ellen, I don't know anybody here. She said, you will know people really soon. So thank you. Thank you for welcoming me to Westford.
I remember that day very vividly.
It was a beautiful day, And don't you know that Pam, who owns the muffin shop and bakes all the scones, lived in Vienna, Virginia, where I did, just a quarter of a mile away.
What a small
Her mother
world.
did. And she went to school where Christine went to school. I mean, it was just the smallest world that could be. So let's go on. Ellen, we've invited you here today to tell us about this amazing project that I know there's a whole lot of backstory and I know there's a whole lot of forward story, the Drew Farm House project. And it has a lot of attention from a lot of people, and especially realtors. Realtors love stories like this. So please, I could go on and tell our audience that you are a moderator for this town. Now, some of our listeners have no idea how these towns are run, but you are the town moderator, which sounds like a very important role. And you have been at the heart of this town since, what, 1967?
That's exactly right.
1967. Yeah. So please, tell us about your project. Tell us about what goes into creating housing for people that don't have housing.
Yeah. Well, I think of all the projects that I've had the pleasure of working on in this town for the last half a century, this is going to sort of bring all of that together into one project. And my husband, Mike, who is my absolutely other half, perhaps three-quarters, it was in 2017 that we bought the building where Muffins on Main sits now.
Yes.
And there was a little selfishness in that. I was mowing my lawn and saw the sign go up that said for sale and thought, 1837 general store, it can't be torn down. So the historian in me came forth. It also was home to 5 apartments, and we knew all the people who lived there. And I didn't want it condominiumized and have to have them move out.
Good.
So I went home in for lunch and said, I have an idea. And we ended up buying the building, have kept it looking exactly the same, have a little bit of the general store and Pam's Muffins on Main, and the 5 apartments are still there.
Great.
And we kept the rents just what they had been with the previous owner. Peter kept them very reasonable, and we can pay the mortgage, and that's all we care about. And it's been wonderful with the people we've gotten to know. And then the former, can I say the name of the real estate company?
Yes, you can. It's well-known, iconic building.
We are colleagues. We're begging them to accept our offers. We love the other realtors.
or join our office.
Join our office.
So there is a red farmhouse and barn right at Boston Road at 495.
Yeah, it's super iconic when you get off the highway.
Yeah, it just sits there and says, wow, what an interesting community this must be, what many people call the gateway to Westford. And that building was built in 1860 by George Drew, the grandfather of the Drew, as in Drew Fruit Farms.
Yes.
And it was built as a 2-family. And then they had a lovely barn. And it was a 2-family in 1980 when a local realtor from Chelmsford, Brad Emerson, came to Westford and bought the property and turned the barn into a real estate office. But the rest was still 2-family. And then in 1994, when Coldwell Banker bought it, the whole place was converted into real estate cubicles to accommodate up to 40 realtors. Wow.
And in a very jigsaw puzzle way.
In a very jigsaw puzzle way.
Yes.
It was a rabbit war.
Mary. That's really accurate. I love that.
I know her desk is here somewhere, but do I
Just
take
keep
a left
going.
or a right? So due to COVID, Coldwell Banker vacated the building and moved into a much smaller storefront kind of place because all of their realtors were working from home and they didn't need it. And that was in March of 2022. And it sat and it sat and it sat and it sat and it sat. And every time Mike and I would drive down Boston Road to go pick up our mail on Route 110, I'd say, what's going to happen to that building? It's not really where you'd want to have a primary residence because it's got 495 on one side and it's
across from the
we
fire
don't know what's on the other
station,
side.
the fire station is there. We don't know what's going to happen to the old Drew farmhouse, but is there any chance it could be like what we have at 40 Main Street, that it could be apartments where the people who just can't afford to live in Westford anymore might be able to afford to live? I mean, the rents are crazy in this town. I mean, we know what
Every town,
you know
but
perfectly
yes.
well what houses cost, but the rents are the same for little 1-bedroom apartments. So we sort of did some math and thought we could make it work if we had a lot of help from the town of Westford. So what we did was to make an offer first we went and met with the town, all the town departments. They were wonderful. They got everybody in one room, and Mike and I explained this crazy plan that we wanted to do. And it would be legal if we got a permit from the Board of Appeals. In any building built before we had zoning in Westford, which was 1955, you can go ask for permission to put in up to 4 apartments, 4 living units in that. Any.
Wow.
I love that you know these things backwards and forwards.
Oh, well, that's the advantage of having been here half a century. And our math showed us that we needed to have actually more than 4 units, but we had this huge barn.
Yes.
So we went to the Board of Appeals in May of 2023 and said, may we have a permit to put 4 units in the farmhouse and a variance to put a 5th. And we also have a special permit and a variance to put 2 more units in the barn. So we would have places for 7 households to live. And they granted that unanimously.
Good.
And then we went to Planning Board, and then we went to Conservation Commission, and then we went to the Affordable Housing Committee, and then we went to 6 boards all together, all of whom said, yes, we support this unanimously. So now we had to figure out how to finance it. Mm-hmm. So we were fortunate enough to get a mortgage from Enterprise Bank, and we got private backers to back that mortgage.
Good.
That the town has nothing to do with that. We formed a nonprofit in Massachusetts called the Drew Farmhouse, Inc., and we have a board of directors of just 3 of us. It's very small, but our mission is very, at this moment, focused. And then we went to the town of Westford, and this was just, it was sort of like the perfect storm in the best sense. Almost 20 years ago, the town of Westford agreed to have a surtax on our property tax. It's called the Community Preservation Act. The state allowed you to do this, and we upped our taxes by 3%. Our goal at that time was to buy East Boston camps, because you can only use that money for open space and preservation, affordable housing, or historic preservation. That's all it can be paid for. You can't hire a fireman, you can't pay a teacher, you can't do anything else. Mm-hmm. So we thought we want to do historical preservation, because from the outside we don't want anybody to know that it's anything different in the Drew Farmhouse than it's always been. Mm-hmm. And in terms of affordable housing, we wanted to charge rents that were low enough that people who work for this town, who grew up in this town, can stay in this town. So we went to town meeting on October 16th, and we asked for not a small amount of money. We asked for $1.45 million, and that's a lot. $1 million for the housing and $450,000 for the historic preservation aspect of it. And we only needed a majority vote, and we got a 2/3.
Wow.
So we took that as such a compliment to, not to us, but to the house and what it could be and what the idea was. And since then, it has been just, we have a builder who, our goal also in our promise to town meeting that night in October was that as much as possible, that $1.45 million would be paid to Westford businesses and Westford contractors. So our contractor is from Westford, our plumber is from Westford, our electrician is from Westford. I consider Lamco to be Westford because they started as a Westford business, Labby and Lammy, even though they've moved across the border.
Yes, the nerve of them.
Yeah, but they are Westford business. Our kitchen cabinet maker is an oldie Boston Square. You know, we're just trying to keep all of that here, and that's what we've been doing. But the magical thing that happened, another magical thing that happened, I had been in touch with Habitat for Humanity of Greater Lowell, whose offices are in Westford, about a completely different project. I was looking for I'm a recycler, so I knew of a house that was being torn down. I thought maybe I can get a sink or two for the farmhouse. And I ended up calling Habitat to see if they wanted, this house had so much in it before it was torn down. And out of that conversation came Habitat's offer of could they possibly create the 2 units in the barn house? And have those be Habitat homes, one on the first floor and one on what's now the hayloft, the second floor of the barn. Yeah. So their architect has designed these 2 absolutely beautiful spaces that will be in the barn. Those will be sold to Habitat eligible families.
Yes, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going through that legality.
Yes, right.
I may need to call you, Mary, on that because that's not a world I know. But our attorney is from Westford and has done everything for us pro bono. I mean, it just has been like I cannot believe how generous people have been to this. So Habitat starts this Tuesday.
Wow.
With their Tuesday crew, all volunteers who will come in and take the real estate out of the barn. And they did that for us, for the Drew Farmhouse on December 5th. You know what that space looked like, just those 40 cubicles. 18 volunteers came in on that Tuesday morning at 8 in the morning. And by 11:30, they had taken out 40 cubicles and piled it all so it could be recycled. Wood here, metal there, wallboard over here. Because I've insisted on that anything we can repurpose, we want to do that. And 1.5 tons of carpeting that they rolled up and put in another special pile so that it could be processed. And now they're coming back on this Tuesday and doing it on the Habitat side of the house. So the farmhouse is in fact framed in. You can walk in now and see where apartments 1, 2, and 3 will be in the farmhouse. And I came from the farmhouse this morning. So on this day, on Friday, the 22nd of March, the framing has begun on the 4th and 5th units in the farmhouse.
Wonderful.
So the studs are up and you can see, that's the kitchen, that's the bathroom, that's the bedroom. They're all one-bedroom apartments except for one will be a 2-bedroom. And the other question that we're asked a lot is, well, who gets to live there? You know? Yeah.
Right. How do you choose?
How do you select? Right.
Yeah. We have an agreement with the town and the Board of Selectmen, because it is their money that's making it happen, that we will do this through the Chelmsford Housing Authority, which has so much experience with this. I don't know if you're familiar with the name of David Hedison. He's the executive director of that, and is also the head of a nonprofit he created years ago called Choice. And I can't remember what the acronym is for, but it's Chelmsford Housing Initiative for Opportunities and something.
Have to get to know him.
So, yeah, you should have him on the program. If you want to know about affordable housing.
Definitely interested.
That's going to become more important.
It's his passion. He's done it his entire life. He started there as a teenager sweeping the floors, and he's now the executive director. And it's his DNA to make affordable housing here and all around Greater Lowell. So they will be our agent, basically. They'll do the advertising for us, and that's as early as April. They'll start the advertising.
Wow.
Is it going to be people that work in Westford? I mean,
we can do Westford preference, Mary. And so for us, Westford means you were born here and lived here, or you've lived here a really long time. You work for the town of Westford, or you don't necessarily work for the town, but you work in Westford. That's what we consider to be Westford. And so
that's generous. That's very generous.
Well, it was the motivation when Mike and I bought 40 Main Street. You know, that those were that was the demographic, and that's where we see the need. We get calls all the time saying, "I hear you have apartments," and I say, "Well, we do, but there are people in them." And this will only be 5. But you know what I hope? Well, just to finish that, so we will follow Chelmsford Housing's guideline. They will do all of that for us. But our board of directors and people have to meet certain income criteria. Those are set by HUD. This is affordable housing is a category that Housing and Urban Development has created. It's not people who don't have a job and just can't get by at all. It's people who have a job but still can't afford anything. So that range of what your minimum and maximum earnings can be is established not by us, not even by Choice. It's decided by HUD. So applicants will have to meet those guidelines. Chelmsford will do the first run-through and decide who's eligible. If more than 5 families qualify, there will be a lottery. Because that's the only fair way to do it. But our board of directors will have the final say, and Westford preference is our first criteria after meeting the income.
Excellent.
We've already received 5 letters from 5 people, as far as I'm concerned. You know, they all. Well, I don't know how their income meets, but just their the letters, I would have said you can move in on Tuesday.
Their stories and their need, right?
Yeah, exactly, Mary.
Yes.
Exactly. You know, it's just, I cried when I read one of them, and I read it to Mike, and I said, this is why we're doing this. This is exactly the person that we hope will be living at the Drew farmhouse. So if all goes as it's going now, we really do hope that there will be people living there by the end of the year, maybe even Thanksgiving.
That's fantastic.
Because our contractor is just like a little dog with a bone. I mean,
Yeah, who are you
I know
using?
that's
Who's
my
the
route. I
contractor?
go by there every day.
yeah, his name is Stephen Gothier, and he created Muffins on Main for us.
He did. What a sweet job he did, huh?
Oh, and I'll tell you how I met Steve. It'll give you some idea about why his heart and his skills are in the same place. In 1995, I was working on a project called the Common Restoration Project to try and take the Westford Common back to the look it had in the late 1800s, with a ring of trees around the outside and a bandstand in the middle.
Which you did, yes.
And we did that thanks to the Westford Rotary, who gave us almost half the money we needed for that.
Wow.
But we didn't, and we had a builder who would help us. Well, the Westford Academy students were tremendous. It was their spring project that spring of 2008. And we were having the great big beams that held the whole thing up made by Neshoba Tech students. So,
Perfect.
'cause
Wonderful.
We had no budget for that either. I seem to get myself into projects for which
You still get them done though, Ellen, don't you?
And I got a phone call absolutely out of the blue from a gentleman who said, my name is Stephen Gothier. I live in town. I'm a contractor. I've read about your project. Have you thought about how you're getting those multi-ton beams from Neshoba Tech up to the Common?
Yeah.
And I said, gosh, no. And he said, well, I have a truck and I could do that for you. And he did. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what a kind man. I'd never met him. He'd never met me. He just thought it was the right thing to do.
He had no investment in the project.
None. Zip. He just did it out of the goodness of his heart. And that's so when Pam and I were working on getting that space renovated for her to create Muffins on Main, I thought, you know, the person I'd really love to work with on this is that man who did that. And he happened to be available.
Lovely.
And he works with a very dear friend, John, who has his own business. And John is helping him down at the farmhouse as well. And when he sets his mind to something, it's going to get done, and it's going to get done to perfection. And he's so much fun to work with. I mean, I can't believe
Most people don't say that about their contractor.
Most people don't love their contractor at the end of a project.
Yes, exactly.
We're not at the end yet, but we have
Well, you
been,
finished one with him, though.
we have been together. And I shouldn't fail to mention our architect, who is also a Westford resident. Jim Zegowitz is a Westford Academy graduate. His architectural firm is in Stoneham, MZO, but Jim is Westford bred. And he just gets it, you know. He just walked into that space and he knew exactly how we wanted it to be. Retain as much of the farmhouse as we can. There's not a lot because Coldwell Banker sort of went through
took it out, yeah.
But there are elements. The front door is still there.
Yeah, the front entry is really
Isn't
cute.
that great?
It is.
And that stairway
That
is still
stairway.
there,
Yep.
Mary?
Yep.
And just the kind of detail, and this is where having that money for historic preservation will allow us to do this. The stair railing has to be about 8 inches taller than it is to be code compliant. Mm-hmm. So there's a young man who lives in Westford, Nick Lemire, a graduate of North Bennett School, the carpentry school in Boston. And Nick has the skills to do historic preservation and restoration. So he's taken each of those balusters, which are 30x inches, and he's added on to them the extra amount. So and the only other new staircase we we will create an apartment 3, which is the L. Here's the building. Here's our wonderful building here. So this L will be a 2-story apartment, and we'll have a new stairway there. And Nick will make the balusters for that to match the 1860 ones in the front of the house.
It's really critical to have someone that is passionate about restoration as much as you are.
Yeah.
It seems that if you're going to do this and do it right.
Yeah, and he gets that. And we found when we took the wallboard and the desks out, right on this little wall right here, there was a diamond window in that corner,
Lovely.
and you can see it from the inside.
Lovely.
Nick's going to remake that for us,
For outside.
so that will
wonderful.
come back. So we discovered a stone wall that we didn't even know was on the property, and we'll be able to expose
Good.
that and restore that. So those are the main historic preservation. We have to rebuild the chimney because it was falling down. But that will go back up, the one on the main house. The front porch, of course, will look exactly the way that it did after we get rid of the crumbles. So it really has been one of the most frantic, but one of the most, it's been exactly a year. We met first
whole
with
year.
the town officials on March 3rd of 2023. And this morning, just before I got here, we had a demolition permit and we had a framing permit, but our full building permit to let us go full bore with electricity, I picked up that this morning.
Wonderful.
So this is a red letter day for the Red Farmhouse.
I have to tell you, at our Rotary meeting just before I called you initially to find out about the project. So I'm talking to the members at the meeting, and we're talking about the project and how important it is. 2 guys said, "Oh, I'm involved in that." Jeff Bram and also Brian Elkhorn.
Yes.
And so, I mean, just like, right live among us already are people who are in on this project. So it was really lovely.
Yeah, that's been, as I said, our attorney has been, and Brian was our closing attorney for us. It was absolutely fabulous. And Jeff Brem has done, fortunately, the whole septic system had been redone in 1994. Good. So that passed Title V, and that set us up for up to 9 bedrooms. And then we found out when we went to the closing and finally had the Title V from the seller, there were actually 2 septic systems on the property.
2 working
2 working septic systems. There was a separate one for the barn because Brad Emerson
Good.
had installed that in 1980.
Good.
So that's wonderful. Habitat can have their
Exactly.
their own water, their own electrical, and their own septic system. And Jeff has been working with both us as well as with Habitat to get those 2 systems. And I try not to talk to him about that when he comes into Muffins on Main on Wednesdays with his wonderful daughter and granddaughter. So try and separate business.
I need to talk to him soon anyway. So.
You know he's going to be there, right? So you ambush him.
Yeah.
He's there for family.
Yes, we're going to the Habitat fundraiser. Was it the April 5th, I guess, is
It
the
is.
Habitat fundraiser.
Yeah,
yes,
I will
right.
be there.
Oh,
actually.
good. Very good. I'll see you there, Carl.
Well,
and
we
I
were
will be there.
very honored. The acting director and the chair of the board of directors, Elizabeth Garber, was kind enough to ask the Drew Farmhouse to come as their guest.
Lovely. Lovely.
So we're honored to be there. So I will be there. Steve may be my date, Steve Gauthier. But if he can't come, another member of our board of directors will join us.
So, Ellen, I know that this is still going on, obviously, but you strike me as a woman that looks to the future. What else? What else is going on? What else are you working on?
This, Mary, is taking all my time. Well, I do still have a fairly large finger in the pie at Muffins on Main. I don't have an official title there. But I got pulled into that when we bought the building because there was a little clothing store there. It was called Fashion Truck on Main. And as we were closing and in the process of negotiating, that lease expired, and Emily Benson decided she wanted to go online and wouldn't be there. And we thought, what can we put in this? I say that in the 50 years we'd been in Westford at that time, there had been 9 different stores in that space. Just nothing had stuck since the general store closed in '69. Everything, Sweet Peas lasted the longest. And Pam was our next door neighbor at 33 Main Street.
At that other beautiful home.
And she was the baker at Kimball's,
Right.
which she loved. It was a great place to work.
Yes.
But she had mused once or twice how much fun it would be to have her own shop where she could sort of do whatever flavors she wanted. So Mike and I walked across the bridge that we have across between our pond and her house and said, How serious were you about that? Because we now have a 800 square foot vacant business. And she said yes.
Awesome.
I mean, right there. And then we had to figure out how to make that happen. So I've been just sort of there to help her. Mm-hmm. I don't have any paid or any title or anything else, but I work there once a week. I help her get the payroll together.
You do a lot of things. I've seen you carry dairy and all kinds of stuff over.
Yep.
Yes,
I carry things across the street
Yes, I
because
do.
we have some storage space in our barn. So that still takes a chunk of my time every single week. Although I'm not on the recycling commission anymore, I am still the pickup site when people buy 64-gallon.
I did that myself. I think that might
What
have
did you
been the
buy?
first time I met Ellen. When you get your recycle bin in Westford, you go to Ellen's barn and you get them there. Yeah.
Well, plus I see the video all the time on the CAT channel. When we turn the CAT channel on, there you are instructing people about recycling.
Yeah, that's very. I was one of the people who began the recycling program
Yes.
back in the 1980s. Our dump was closed by the state, and we did have a recycling center down there. It was on Cold Spring Road now, where Bluebird Hill is, and a woman named Sue Getz had started WASTE. Westford Association to Save Tomorrow's Environment. And she started a little pilot recycling program there. But when the dump closed, the landfill, and we were going to have curbside pickup of trash and recycle, all the recycling was going to go in the trash. And we were paying by the pound. And a group of us thought, that makes no sense at all. And the heaviest thing at that point was newspapers. Now we don't read as many newspapers,
Right.
but in 1985, everybody got probably both the Lowell Sun and either the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald every single day, and they threw them out. So in the 80s, we started a newspaper recycling program down at the state recycling site on Boston Road, that people would come one Saturday a month and bring all their newspapers. And that evolved eventually into the Recycling Commission. But after 35 years of being on it, I stepped back. But I still sell the toters. I still take the phone calls from residents who say, nobody picked up my recycling today, or how do I recycle? Or how
You
do I
do the
get
big
rid of?
things and the little things. You're
Yeah.
like a realtor.
That's right.
You do the big things and the little things.
yeah,
That's right.
Yeah. Way to bring that around, Mary. Love that.
Yeah, you like that. I'm sure it's just like selling a house. When you pick up the phone, you think, I wonder what this one's going to be.
It's true.
never
I've
crossed my mind.
vacuumed. I've
shoveled
cleaned out a fridge
snow.
or two. Yep, I've shoveled. Yep.
I put air freshener around to hide whatever that herb was. But Ellen, I watch this town because I'm part of the Rotary here, and of course I hang my license here, but live next door. And I'm astounded. I see all these little housing projects, like the Crocker House was open. That was lovely for seniors of low income, right? And Bob Wascavage was telling me about a poor farm property.
Yes.
What is that?
Yeah. So down on Town Farm Road, which is sort of right between Graniteville and Forge Village.
Oh, the old wreck. Is that?
That's the one. Yeah, it needs a little love, Mary. But the town built that in the early 1800s. I believe it was in the 1830s or 40s, to be a town farm or a poor farm, as they were often called. There was no state welfare system. So when residents fell on hard times, couldn't pay their taxes, had a bad year with the crops, and just couldn't keep it together, they could go live there for a little while until things came back together. And it was a working farm. There were crops, they had animals, and they would work the farm, and then when things got better, they could go home. Some people lived there the rest of their lives, but most people, it was a transitional place for them. And I think that Westford stayed, then the state welfare system began in the 1950s or 60s, and the local level really didn't have that responsibility anymore. But we kept ours still open. It wasn't called the Town Farm or the Poor Farm anymore. It was called Westford House, I think, or something more generic. But it stayed open until the 1950s, when the last residents went to move to Tewksbury State Hospital. And there we had this beautiful home that had an addition added to it about 20 years in the early 1900s. So not unlike the Drew farmhouse, it has a main house and then it has an L that goes off of it. And we have not been good stewards of that property. We didn't know quite as much about keeping historic buildings then. The school department offices moved there. That's where the superintendent's building was. And then moved out in 2001, I believe. Then it became the recreation department offices. And then they moved out, and it's been vacant ever since.
And that's been what, like 5, 6, maybe 7,
maybe, I think
8?
we're up to 7.
7 or 8, yeah. Because my son did crew at WA, and so we'd sign him up there.
Yeah. So what happened was, I believe it was 4 years ago, it probably was in 2019, that it was on the selectmen's agenda to consider tearing the building down. They tried to find a developer. Someone had responded to the RFP, but they couldn't come to terms between the developer and the town, so that ended. So they said, well, maybe we just have to take it down. And there were about 5 people at that select board meeting for completely different issues. They were all there. And 5 of them stood up and said, "What, you can't do that."
I love it.
I do too.
I love the attitude.
And I think I know that Nancy Cook was one of them. Who else was there? I was there as well. And they said, give us 6 months to see if we can find something else to do with it. And if we can't, then we'll throw in the towel. And that's when David Hedison appeared in our life.
Oh.
And he had approached the director of the Cameron Senior Center. It's David Hedison's group that has done the Helena Crocker.
I see.
And he also developed the housing down on Tadmuck Road. There's one older facility that's senior housing, and then there's another bigger facility up behind it.
Yes, I know what you're talking
David
about.
did the latter. So he's had fingers in most affordable housing in Merrimack Valley, actually. So he came to our first meeting that summer of 2019 and said, I think we could make this into affordable housing.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Senior affordable housing.
Senior.
Truly affordable senior housing. And our committee, I'm the chair of that committee. Now, that's what happens when you stand up at town meeting. And that's how I got on the recycling commission, too.
It's that passion. That
wonderful
passion gets you in trouble
It
all the
is,
time.
all the time.
You know, town
Saying
committees
yes.
can come in 2 colors. People can come with very different goals, and it can be sort of a... And all 12 of these people came because they wanted to, A, save the building, and B, they wanted it to be truly affordable senior housing.
That's wonderful.
We've never had a crossword. And there was David saying, well, I can get you the money to do it for you through state and federal funds. And I might just point out, we assiduously stayed away from that source of funding from the Drew farmhouse because the red tape, the time, because we would not have studs up in March of 2024.
Right. Good.
But David has the patience and the contacts to do that. So the selectmen awarded him the bid to be the developer for that property. Too long ago now. It was in 2022, and he's still getting the funding all together. But it's going to happen.
Lovely.
He's hoping that they will take ownership in 2025, and then they will start construction, and they will have it will be big, much bigger than what we're doing, because not only will they maintain the original farmhouse.
Right, it won't be torn down.
It won't be torn down.
So
there will
important.
be living units in that in the old farmhouse, as well as the public space, and the Westford Food Pantry will move there.
Oh, I
wonderful.
heard that. I heard that. Yes,
That's
yes,
wonderful.
They're
that's right.
crammed in the basement of the senior center.
senior
Yes, they
center.
are.
And they will have their whole right-hand side of the old farmhouse will be theirs, upstairs and down, their own refrigerators, no more of
And yes,
this.
they'll see daylight.
That's what will be nice.
Yeah, a little bit of sunshine in there would be good.
Yeah, but there will be an addition on the back of the
Good.
building that will, but it won't look quite 1870, but it won't look 2025 either. Their architect has done a really good job of
Good.
blending those two. And the 2 little buildings where your son's shells were stored for crew, those will be taken down, not with the shells in them, to allow enough room for parking.
Parking, yeah.
But it's all been approved by the Board of Appeals, so it has the town stamp of approval.
That's wonderful.
They're now just waiting for the funding, and if David Hedison does it, it will be perfection. So that will be really great.
Well, this has been an amazing discussion. Just, I am so heartened.
I am too.
Heartened by the commitment and the effort and the creativity.
I mean, I always loved Westford. I lived here 17 years. I still work here. Moved out a couple years ago, but still feel like this is my town. This is where I raise my kids. So I love to see that passion, and the preservation and all of that. It's really a great town.
And, it's unique, Mary. When I served on the board as a moderator, there's a group called the Massachusetts Moderators Association. And moderators would talk about how they couldn't get anybody to serve on the finance committee, and nobody volunteered anymore. And I don't know if it's in our drinking water, but, there is something that when people move to this town, they just get it. Yep. That it's not just the paid people at Town Hall that run it. It's really from the bottom up. And if you do have a good idea as a volunteer and you want to get it done, there are just people who will help you. Mm-hmm. They will give their time and energy and their money to make it happen. And I think that's extremely unique. And we've been able to keep it going even into 2024 as people get busier. So it is still alive and well in Westford. And I hope it stays forever.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too, Ellen. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for asking.
Yes, it is just wonderful to see you.
It's nice to see you.
And we'll have to have you
Come
back.
on back to Muffins.
I'll be back at Muffins. We'll do something gluten-free there soon. But
They do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
We'll go to
Pam
Muffins.
does
Okay,
the
good. Okay, good.
By a Westford baker.
Wonderful.
Annie's Bakery. It's in Shirley, but she lives in Westford. And she's
lovely.
gluten-free.
Okay, great.
See you soon.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ellen.
Good luck.
Thank you
Take care.
so much.
Mary, Mary, and Mary, so extraordinary. Well, now they're talking about houses, they're talking